We have so many stories in our lives, but our stories are not always heard. On the Hear My True Story podcast, we tell our own true stories.
Before the white car parked, our head teacher had scattered. Looking at him, I could only see his tie that was flying backwards, waving at us, and he disappeared in thin air.
I want to share my life story. I want to share my voice with the people because I know that just a small joke I can tell through this podcast, it will make someone smile.
When you ask me what I fear most in life, I would definitely respond to you and say it's fear itself.
We are fighting for togetherness. We are fighting for equal rights. We are fighting to end injustice.
You don't have to be a storyteller or writer because, guess what? Life writes the best stories.
Hear my true story.
This is your favorite time of the week with your number one podcast.
Hear my true story.
Yes, our dear listener, thank you so much for joining Hear My True Story podcast. It is me, your host, Otako. Yeah, thank you so much, our dear listeners, for always joining us on Hear My True Story podcast. We are happy to always share our own stories, our own experiences, and today is quite a wonderful episode. We have our guest from Kampala, Uganda. She will introduce herself, but for now, I'd like to say we are excited. Please stay tuned in our podcast. Don't leave. We are going to talk about human trafficking. What is human trafficking? How does it happen in Uganda? How are these young girls and women ending up into being victims of human trafficking? So today we have a deep discussion and experience with an activist from Uganda.
This week's special guest on your favorite podcast.
Hear my true story.
So please, can you maybe introduce yourself for our dear listeners?
Dear listeners, good afternoon. Here it's afternoon. I'm Mariam Mwiza, an anti-human trafficking activist and CEO of Seas Workers Voice Uganda, an organization that was started 2019 with the aim of fighting and ending human trafficking.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mwiza. That's really nice to know that you're really doing a good job towards fighting human trafficking. But I would like to ask you, what is your story? What is your story? What's behind you? Why did you decide to fight human trafficking as a person? What drove you into this activism?
What led me into this activism is that I was born with this passion or with the seed of doing things that are extraordinary, are so different. But then way back, it happened that I come from a family background that is very poor, whereby my mother and my father separated. And to some extent, the way they fought, I saw how my mother, being a woman, was taking an advantage of. She had no voice, and I was still a young girl at 8 years. So at that age, something came over me, and I started feeling so uncomfortable seeing a woman or a girl, her rights being violated or taken for granted, more especially when it comes to us in Africa. So all of that time as I was growing up, I used to hear stories, girls are violated, girls' rights are violated, women are beaten, but I was like, okay. So not until 2018, I had to land on a story, which was very many stories all over social media about human trafficking, about Ugandan girls and women taken to different destinations in the Gulf states and for labor exploitation and sex trafficking, organ trafficking. So all these stories reminded me how my mother was being taken advantage of. So it made me to sit down and make some little research if there was an organization or if there was any voice for these girls. So that actually sparked me into what I'm doing right now. And all this started with one person because her story was so touching. And her story was so touching in the way that she had left the country before she left, she had given birth, but then she was of a cesarean section. And she was younger than me. So in the tears that she was making, the alarms she was making on social media, it seemed like no one was willing to help her. I just cross-checked. She was she was coming from a family whereby she was rejected. So listening to all these stories, they used to take me back to see myself actually suffering because of the separation of my father and my mother, and how my mother was seriously beaten. She could not, even when they went to court, she was not given an opportunity, to say something. Simply, she's a woman and she has no voice. So that kind of life triggered me into fighting human trafficking. But then, particularly if it comes to trafficking, when I read different stories, I realized that I realized that in Uganda we have few people who are really concerned about this vice. First of all, people were so scared to speak about it, and but they managed to speak about other injustices. But human trafficking was left behind. People were so scared to break the silence. So I just gathered myself, and I saw myself coming in.
Oh, thank you so much for that wonderful sharing of your personal story about why you chose to fight human trafficking. As an activist, I just want to ask you, maybe for you to draw us a picture. I mean, how are these girls trafficked in Uganda? How do they end up being enslaved in the Middle East or maybe in the Gulf region?
Well, these girls, both women and girls here, they end up in these Gulf regions. We have two ways. One are recruited by the local agents. These are the agents with no offices, with just connections in those countries. And then another group, it's a group of labor firms which are, registered by the government. But then they all suffer the same. There is no difference between those that were taken or those that are being taken by the local individuals or the labor export firms. Now, what happens here is that these ones that are taken by local individuals, the traffickers, they are so smart enough that they seduce these girls, tell them stories, tell them that they're going to get a lot of money because, here in Uganda, one of the challenges that we face as a country, more especially youth, is that we lack employment. So they take this advantage of these girls being unemployed, them being illiterate, because remember, these are the traffickers. Most of them, they know how to go to deep in the villages and try to tell these women and girls in their local languages. So promising them heaven and earth, promising them how they're going to earn 1.2 Ugandan million shillings, how they'll be treated. So if immediately as these girls and women hear this, they have no any other option. It's just apart from surrendering to them. And now this, so what happens from there is that they will ask them the national ID, then to work on their passports, because in most cases the passport is always catered for by the agent or the trafficker. So even those that don't have national IDs, even those that are underage, those who are still below 18 years, so these traffickers are smart enough that they make sure they provide all these services. So they tell them, we are going to work for you on these documents. We are going to do this for you. We are going to do this for you. So make sure don't do anything. You just give me this amount of money It happens that some they charge some amount of money, and that is from, it is always like from 1.5 and above, and then they tell you, sit at home, we shall pick you. So there are some that use those ways of transporting these girls from rural areas, bring them to city centers like here in Kampala, then take them to porous borders, and the porous borders, the ones that are on the extreme end of Uganda, more especially the one that ends with Kenya. So the next destination, they will find them at Kenyatta Airport, and that's being trafficked. Now, there is also another way whereby these companies, that however much they are registered, but as far as the Prevention of Human Trafficking in Persons Act 2009 and Regulation 2019 Ugandan Act, whatever they do, it is completely human trafficking, because they seduce them, they lie them, and they tell them, we are taking you for free. We are recruiting you to these countries for free. And then another thing, they also tell them, they confiscate their national IDs from here, and then from here, in the process of being recruited up to their destinations, these girls don't have an access of owning or having their documents. The documents are confiscated from here, and when they reach the other side, the office that welcomes them are the ones that are going to be with these documents. So in trafficking, the moment that you confiscate any document of mine and I'm denied to get some services, public services, or any service due to the confiscation, that I don't have this document, then that makes it to be human trafficking, because you've taken me you've confiscated my documents. So, and it happens that in this entire process, in most cases, what they are told when they are here in Uganda is not what they find.
Enjoying this episode? Leave a review now.
Hear my true story.
I mean, just to, because what you are talking now is what I just wanted to ask. I mean, what exactly do they tell these girls that they are going to do there? What jobs do they tell them? I mean, what jobs do they end up doing when they are trafficked, for example, to the Middle East, maybe to Saudi Arabia, maybe to any other part of the world?
Yeah, out of experience, that are about 400 victims that have come back by my influence. These are different stories, and one of them is that some are taken, being deceived to work as nurses in those hospitals in those countries, especially Dubai, Saudi Arabia, and Jordan. And then someone who was taken to work as a nurse ends up working in a house. Then others are told that are going to work in good hotels. Then others are told that they are going to work as teachers. I have interacted with all these victims. So they end up they all end up working in house as housemaids. So yeah, and on top of that, the reason they tell them such jobs is that they want their attention. They want for them to believe that where we are going, life is going to be okay. Life is better than the one which is in Uganda. So when they reach in that moment in those countries, they are directly taken to homes to work as housemaids. Remember, you don't have a passport, you don't have any document. First of all, you went with no money. Then most of them, the biggest percentage, their phones are confiscated, are being taken away from them. So you don't have way of communicating. Even when you want to come back, there is no any document that will allow you to come. Then there are some taken to longer distances that you cannot easily connect with the embassy. So that completely makes it a complete human trafficking. Yeah, that's how I can explain how what they are being told and what they find. And when you look at what they always tell them, the kind of training they are given is that they are told that once you reach there, the person who is going to welcome you is your boss. Therefore, There is nothing like a no. Whatever he or she tells you, it must be a yes. I speak this as I'm somehow breaking down. That is some who were told, and they took that when you reach anything your boss tells you, you say it's a yes. Now, it happens that this lady who left her 2 kids back in Uganda, she went to work for her girls, and she was told, she was trained in that way. When she was reached, she was taken in a house whereby the boss was a woman. And now, guess what? The woman, in the process of this lady working for some months, the woman told her, we have to make love. So for her, she saw it like she couldn't really manage it. But remember, they had put something in her head that whatever your boss tells you, it's yes. So you see how she ended. She ended in that situation. She had to make love with a fellow woman. And by the time she came back, actually, she came back crippled because she tried to fight for herself. And in that process, she broke her leg. So that is also an unfortunate part of these women and girls taken to these Gulf states. And all these are done, and and many other things. Like even when even they are there, what actually even makes it trafficking or slaves, they are not treated. Ugandan, they will, in fact, like where I am right now, many death cases, and there is no, a straight cause of death. Ugandans dying like, on a daily or a monthly basis, getting, picking coffins and like there is no reason, there is nothing like they can give or tell us that this guy died because of this.
So I mean, I want to just ask you, sorry to cut you.
It's okay.
These girls are not given health insurance, one.
No, not at all, yeah.
And two, you talked about them being prepared. How do they prepare them? I mean, those agencies, those agent firms that export labor that ends up the girls into being enslaved in the Middle East.
Yes.
How do they prepare them? I mean, in terms of like...
They don't prepare them. It has been one of the achievements that I try to achieve, so that if they are going, they should be trained or taught, but they are never been trained. The only thing they are told is to respect your boss by responding to whatever he tells you. Whether it's good or bad for you, you're supposed to obey.
And say yes.
So the only thing, so they're not trained even how, let's say if you are prepared to be a nanny, you would go knowing that you're going to work as a nanny. If you're prepared that you're going to work as a nurse, then be prepared knowing that you're going to work as a nurse. But the training which is conducted in Uganda is on record. They just tell them whatever your boss tells you, it is a yes. And I don't know if it's okay to add on this one, because it comes in the same line. That
you can.
You talked about the insurance, the medical insurance, but then that one is there, and then there is this that they are not trained, and so on top of that, the 60% of Ugandans, of women and girls that are taken in those countries, most of them, they are denied food. It is, it sounds like it's not there, but, out of the experience now, I spoke with boldness that there is this kind of, after the boss tells you and they're like, you're not okay, the first punishment you're going to get is to deny you food. In this generation, in this era that we are in, someone being denied food for a week, and then the little thing they can do is to give you water, which you have to get from the latrine, So this is how some of those elements in this trafficking or modern slavery of the girls that are taken to those countries.
Follow on Apple Podcasts.
Hear my true story.
Okay. So I just want to, because you mentioned about their passports and phones, being taken. I mean, what is the purpose? Why do they take their passport? Those are personal documents. Why do they take their mobile phones, which they have to communicate with their families when they're in these countries?
Yes, the purpose of that, it is done in regard of them fulfilling the work or in accordance to what we call kafara system. Kafara system, it is a system that is in these 6 Gulf states, and it was introduced way back in around 1950s with a purpose. When you look at how kafara system was created and done, it was created in a way that for it has to monitor or to bring the employer and the employee, the two, the sponsor and the migrant worker, two of them. So what happens in this kafara system? First of all, it is an irrecruitive system whereby it doesn't respect or it doesn't observe human rights. So if you were to go there, you just have to forget one thing about what is human rights. Just know going that you don't have rights. You're going to work as a donkey or you're going to work as a slave. So this system, it monitors the only two, and in the way how it was drawn, it's in a way it puts us the advocates aside. The government is not in; they are not included, and even the exporters or the recruiters are not in the system. So the recruiters, for them in this particular case, they work as brokers. For them, they join the two parties, but in a how it was developed, they are not there. So why is it even recruitive, or why is it that it doesn't observe their rights? Because in kafara system it's Arabic, but in English it means to take care of. So this means that when you go there, me who have bought you, I've used the word buying, me who have bought you, it means I am fully responsible for your health, for your education, for your life, so that system gives powers to the employer or the sponsor to do whatever he wants to you. So to control you, they have to take your passport. That is why the passports are taken. There is no any reason why passports are taken. And the legal status, they are all in the hands of the sponsor. Even this happens even before you have left the country, because that's how the system was. It starts from here, and then as you're going, you're already in the system. So when you look at it, and in many cases, like we try to say, we want to repatriate this person, she's sick, she's dying, she's in hospital. Once the sponsor doesn't give us a legal, doesn't give us an exit visa, we will never bring this person back, because this system gives the powers to the sponsors to have the powers over your exit visa. It even gives him the powers to confiscate your passports. It gives him the powers to mistreat you, and the law will have completely nothing to do with him. It actually protects the employer or the sponsor or the recruiter from being caught up by law. Because, for instance, we've got cases whereby Ugandans women have been raped in Saudi Arabia. For God's sake, with all the evidences, with all the efforts that we try to collect these evidences, we are told we can't do anything because the kafara system protects this person. This girl was taken to this rapist. And through the kafara system, the rapist has the powers to do what he takes, to do whatever he wants. Either he can choose to keep this girl for 4 years in the country, and much as we have embassies there, but because of kafara system, the embassies are useless. It is until this system is completely abolished that the girls can work or can work with their documents or can keep their phones. And so this system, it makes you be a complete commodity to this person. When I buy you as a commodity, I buy a commodity like my mobile phone, I have a right to take it to the mechanic, I have a right to put it off, I have a right to throw it away if I want. So in the interpretation of whatever is going on, this is how I can, come with it. That's why I came with my message, that human beings are never commodities and no one owns anyone. Me, I'm trying to be against the kafara system. So you asked me why the passports are confiscated. That's what I was trying to respond to.
Okay. So which countries does this kafara system, operate?
This kafara system, there are 6 countries, namely, because when you look at how where there is Bahrain, is it Bahrain? But we don't always get Ugandans that side. But I'm just giving it to you because it's one of the countries that still have this system. Then we have Kuwait, we have Lebanon, we have Qatar, Oman, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates.
And which countries does the Ugandan government export labor to among these ones?
It exports labor to Saudi Arabia, to United Arab Emirates. Yeah. So this one and Qatar. Yeah, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates. Yeah, and those are the 3. So these ones where other Ugandans are, they are just there illegally. They were taken, okay. But all in all, they are the same.
I see. I looked it up here. Just like you said, it means to take care. But to me, the way you talk about it, it's more like modern slavery. Seriously.
Let me just help you why it is. In my research, I discovered that before 1950s, this system was there in their culture, in Arab culture. It was there to take care of orphans. But it was amended in 1950s when now the thing of migrant workers came in. So that's why it just remained like that. But when it comes into reality, it is modern slavery. You get like when you have a system. This system first worked in the communities of Arabs in those countries way back before 1950s, and the purpose was to take care of the orphans. So when it, years kept going on, in 1950s it was changed from taking care of orphans now to have these Africans who were going to these countries. So it remained like take care of, but in reality, in how it is practiced, more especially to Africans, it is more than taking care of. It is modern slavery.
Okay.
Hit subscribe and don't miss the next episode. Hear my true story.
So, thank you so much for that real explanation. I'm sure our dear listeners, you are really following and you are able to understand what we are talking about. We are here addressing issues that are affecting Ugandan girls, Ugandan women, not just Uganda, also Kenya, Tanzania. There are many girls that end up in this Gulf region or Middle East being trafficked, ending up into modern slavery. So I want to just ask another question to you, please. How do these girls, if their phones are taken away, how do they keep in touch with their families? How do they get to activists like you?
Yeah, at first, before some activists in Uganda, like us and others, including you and many, before it was completely phones being taken off. But I just want to applaud us that our voice is trying to do something. That the campaigns, the media campaigns that we make is not out only in vain. So when we started bringing this out of media, actually media helped us a lot. And when we started talking this boldly without getting intimidated, now the companies or the recruiters started getting scared because they were going to make losses. So now they try to leave you with the phone, but on condition you want to be with Wi-Fi. If you want data, buy yourself the internet. But remember, the person they are telling to buy internet, you paid at the end of the month, and the money is sent by the boss. You're not sending the money to your family. You don't have access to that. So what always happened is that, so when there was that chance of now us raising it as a concern that why can these girls be given their phones? They are given phones, but still on a limited manner. So you buy yourself internet, or if you put there, oh, thank you God that I've remembered to talk about this. When it's connected and you're on Wi-Fi, the boss will make sure he gets this phone of yours and he connects it with his, so that every information that you've been sent out there, he will be in position to know. They are tracked, their phones are tracked. In most cases, when we are talking to them, this is one of the challenges that we find, because whatever they tell to us, it is directly on the boss's phone. And actually, this puts these girls in danger. Some of the cases that I've worked on, and somehow I felt like maybe I wouldn't have talked to this girl, I wouldn't have lost her. In the process of she's trying to talk to you and giving you the case. And in the process of you trying to make calls, and so this information is getting back to the boss. And at the end of the day, after 1-2 days, they will tell you, sorry, you've lost her. But someone has been talking to her in 2 days and she has not been sick. Then the next time they will tell you, no, sorry, we just found her in a room and she hanging herself. But then remember, I don't have an access to look in that room, And because of kafara system, the embassy will not be given an access to access the home of this person, right? So that this puts us in position to believe whichever lie they tell us. Among, let's say, in the 10 cases of death cases that I have worked on, you'll find that 6 of them is of that nature. And sometimes that actually makes me to get scared, to get more deeper when I'm trying to investigate these cases. Like, if someone tells you, I've been sexually harassed, and you really want to get more information about it. So in this process of this girl giving the information back to you, you lose her, So they have phones, but still they're using them out of risking their lives. So someone chooses not to be on the phone because knowing that even when I'm on the phone, I will be subjected to death at any time. Okay, so phones are used, but you see how they are being used. Or even if you're using, they give you limited time. Make a call, and you must call in the presence of the boss. Wow. That means when you're sexually harassed, you cannot tell your mother that I've been sexually harassed.
This is really hard. It's really hard, more especially when someone is living in the outside country, not your home country. It becomes so difficult. Our dear listener, thank you so much for being with us in this conversation. I'm sorry because of time. I really think we can continue with this conversation in our next episode with Mariam Mwiza as she talks about human trafficking in Uganda, East Africa, in Africa, and globally, and how she is really doing a job as a human rights activist. I hope you join us in the next episode.
We not only have voices for a podcast, but also faces for YouTube. Don't miss your next episode. Hear my true story.
Thank you for listening to our podcast, Music by Edwin Matovo, hosted and produced by Otako. Subscribe to our podcast for more stories and visit us on our website, hearmytruestory.com, for more stories. All the links are listed in the show notes of this podcast.